podcast is a member of WildGamesProductions.com and D20Radio.com.
Between the time when wargamers played with chainmail and the rise of the wizards of the coast, there was an age of gamers. And unto this, Gygax, destined to bear the crown jewel of TSR upon a troubled brow, to show you all how to roll for initiative.
The Roll for Initiative podcast, issue number 81, volume number 2. This is DM Vince on take number 5 of this show. As technical difficulties have brought us down, and I'm recording the show. I am in charge today. No! I am DM Vince, sitting alongside a DM failure of audio equipment, Matt.
Yes. And everyone, whenever you update your audio drivers, test your Skype recording software before trying to record a podcast.
One to grow on. And sitting next to my evil cohort, DM Nick. Okay. And my not-so-evil cohort. The heck was that? My not-so-evil cohort, DM Will.
Hey there, what's going on?
Not much, Bismarck. So,
what's up?
So, how's your I'm dying to know how's that project going with the tiles.
Well, the whole thing on this is that I'm going to continue to make tiles, the floor tiles and the floor tiles. The floor tiles and the wall tiles. I'm going to continue to make those as long as I have this beautiful weather, and I'm going to start painting tomorrow. And from there on, we'll see how it all turns out. At the end of the week, I'll be taking some pictures then.
I know you put up a lot of pictures on osrgaming.org in the forums, where everybody should go for the various entertainment that we provide.
Now, one
we
thing
are entertaining.
Yeah, the one thing is, though, I haven't done my videos yet, and someone wants me to do videos on how I do this stuff, because they said, like, I would make a good Bob Ross. If no one knows who Bob Ross is, look him up on Wikipedia, find out who he's all about.
You got a big afro, too, and everything?
Yeah, the big afro guy, the painter. And but me, I'm a smart ass, so I'm going to be a smart alecky kind of Bob Ross kind of imitation, so I think y'all will find some joy out of that.
Oh, my God. That's
boy.
What a picture you paint.
Yeah.
Well, no, I don't paint no pictures. I'm going to tell people, like, when I do a towel, okay, this is the towel right here. Yes, it looks like this, but guess what? It's going to change here real soon. Now, if you don't like the way it looks, it doesn't matter what people say about it. It's still a floor tile. Who cares if it's painted red, blue, green, or yellow? Yeah, I just keep on. I can be a smart butt about it, but we'll see how it all turns out.
All right. Cool. So last week's show, when we talked about converting D20 into first edition, I hope everybody enjoyed that. Like I was saying in the last 4 takes, that didn't get recorded. It's probably one of the most requested things we've had since day one, right, Matt?
Yeah, it's just something when there was so much D20 stuff that was released in the 2000s that people have all this stuff and they want to know how to use it in their old games. So we finally went between me and Will, actually, and you, Vince, we actually had people on the show that had lots of experience in the 3.0 world, whereas when it was you, Nick, and Jason, it was mostly you with the experience, if I'm not mistaken.
It was, and Jason was just like, I don't deal with that, so I don't know. That was his answer when I brought that up to him. So he tried, but he didn't like it, so whatever. Anyway, so yeah, cool. I hope everybody enjoyed it, and I hope everybody continues to download and spread the word. RFI staff, gmail.com was our email. RFIpodcast.com. Go to Facebook.com/RFIpodcast. Or you can go to osrgaming.org and /forums, and you can go chat with all the folk there. Especially Will.
Always me.
Always Will. All the time. So let's head into some sage advice.
Master! They're at the gates again! Master! It looks like another band of adventurers!
Adventurers again? Always the same. Coming to me for sage advice.
No singing today, huh?
Whoa. No singing today. Trying to be a cooler podcast, my friend. Boom. No, anyway. Got a bunch of emails here. First one actually comes in from Tim, and you'd probably appreciate this one, Will. I
Tim the
served.
Enchanter?
No, not Tim the Enchanter. They just called me Tim. No. I served as a sniper for several years in the Army, and your discussion of all the different factors in combat reminded me of all the different calculations in taking a shot, the elevation, the wind, ballistic charts, and humidity and range. So he just wanted to let you know. Thanks for that.
Oh, wow, that's awesome.
Well, thank you very much. Who was that from?
Tim.
Tim the Enchanter, who was a sniper.
Yes.
Well, I appreciate that. Hey, I have huge respect for snipers. I met a couple in my time when I was in the National Guard. When I was in Iraq, and boy, that's hard to do.
It isn't, actually, I talked to a lot of people because I was at Parasol as an instructor down there, screaming, yelling, and hollering all the recruits and everything. But, marksmanship, basic marksmanship is so easy. It's just the fundamentals. And, when people say, well, I pulled the trigger, you never pull a trigger. You always squeeze a trigger.
Yeah, exactly.
And that makes a big difference on how a weapon will work. It's just awesome.
Now, when it comes to spotting and sniping, isn't it an equal job? Does spotter have through a sniper, or two different type of things?
It's
well, see, go ahead.
Well, from what I understood, they one guy. It's usually as a team. You have one guy who's a spotter, and one guy who's the actual shooter, who actually is shooting at the target, wherever it may be. Now, they're both trained as snipers. It's just they'll alternate between whoever's doing the shooting and whoever snipes. At least that's how I know it is in the Army.
Right. Well, I can tell you that in Vietnam, I know some snipers, and I can't think of the guy's name for the life of me, and I kicked myself in the butt, but this guy was by himself, and he did everything on his own. I know that he assassinated, or whatever, he's an enemy, he's a target. He went out by himself, and, it took him many days just to, crawl 10 feet or 20 feet. So, and some of them do it by themselves, and that's some crazy stuff. I give it to those guys. They have a lot of heart.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Tim, the Enchanter, who's a sniper.
Awesome. That's scary now. Don't kill his character in D&D.
No, don't, right? This next
Snipe
one.
you with a magic missile.
Yes. This next one. I'm sorry?
No, I would say one shot, one kill.
Yeah. Pop. This next one comes from Jeffrey. Gentlemen, I'm looking around the room. Where?
Yeah.
What's that? Three Stooges thing. Where? I have been truly enjoying your podcast. As a new DM and new to Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, I'm enjoying the freedom that it offers compared to the newest edition. Thank you. What I do miss are what I consider some really basic information stats, such as how far can a person not trained in jump, or what are some basic rules for sneaking around if you're not a thief, because a human fighter trying to learn to sneak around and dual class into a thief has to learn sometime. Do you just make it up on the fly, or do you have some stacks of stats, of books, of references when you're playing? I am new and only have a couple of basic books, so some advice would be appreciated. Anyone have any advice from this? So we'll stop right there.
Yeah, actually I do. What you could do is, and I think we've talked about this before, is with first edition AD&D, and I think this goes with all the other editions prior to third, is just use your best judgment as a DM and try to be consistent with that judgment from then on. For example, when you're talking about these, like a fighter who wants to sneak around. Well, one thing I would do, just to use an example, is I would have that person make like maybe a dex check with a certain modifier. Make a D20 roll on that. So that's one thing that you could do. Another thing, maybe you could borrow from another system. Use something else. Another system that I was, you could consider using would be like from BRP, Basic Role Playing, which is by Chaosium. And they base some of their stuff is off of a percentile system based off of like one of your core stats. So let's, the same example, like maybe your thief wants to, not your thief, but your fighter, he wants to sneak around a little bit. So maybe his dex is only 12. Maybe, you'll maybe do his dex times 5, or or Dex times 3, and that's his percentile roll, something like that.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of ways you could approach it.
Yeah, you could even look at what is the chance of success for like a first level thief to do this. Mm-hmm. A fighter of any level really probably shouldn't be able to sneak around better than a first level thief.
Right.
So then you could be like, well, if a first level thief can succeed on this check on a 50% chance, I'm going to make it lower than that and just figure out how difficult you think it should be. So first level thief succeeds on a 50, maybe this fighter will succeed on a 35%.
Yeah, there you go.
And
that's another option.
There's no wrong answer anyway.
Right, there's no wrong answer, and the big thing is, like I said, consistency. Once you make that particular ruling, I think someone said, it's rulings, not rules. That's one of the cornerstones of this game. As long as you're consistent on that ruling from that day forward, you shouldn't have a problem.
Yeah. See, that's the key thing right there. And all of you had said it straight on the mark and everything. My thing is like this. The DM needs to stop saying no and start saying yes. Mm-hmm. And the way I say this is when someone says, well, my fighter wants to sneak around and do this. And the DM says, well, the fighter can't sneak around. Why not? Well, because that's not in the book. And that's ridiculous. Yeah. And it's the same thing applies if I have a non-thief character saying, well, I want to check the door for traps. Now, I mean, yes, the chance of them actually finding a trap will be low, but that doesn't mean they can't find one. Right. Of course, they'll probably set it off. That's how they're going to find it, because they set it off in the process. So,
well, and there are certain things though that you might have to say no to. I mean, there's like a person playing a fighter say, "Well, I want to cast magic missile." Well, you can't. You don't have the spell memorized, and you don't have it written down. There are certain things where obviously you're going to have to say no.
But when it comes to skills and actions, that's what I'm referring to.
Right.
General purpose skills. And a thief is trained to sneak and hide in shadows and all that. But that doesn't mean that other characters cannot hide in shadows. They may think that they're successful, and that's how I like to play it off.
Right.
I roll and they fail. Well, the bad guy sees them, but they say, you know what? He's trying to hide from me. I'm going to play my favorite. So I like turning it around. So, and the thing on jumping, well, I mean, it's common sense. If it's a 50-foot pit, I'm certain that someone's not going to jump 50 feet.
No.
I mean, that's common sense. Now, if it's 10 feet, maybe 15 feet, you have to take things into consideration. Well, if you're a naked fighter, you could probably jump 15 feet and catch that thing over there with a dexterity check and hold on to it. But if you're fully in full-plate mail armor with shield and 100 pounds in your pack and everything, well, you're jumping 5 inches. You're
gonna drop like a rock.
Yeah.
So it's all about, just like you say, just common sense judgment, and just remember regular general skills. Just make a judgment call.
Yep, and be consistent on that call afterwards. That's right.
Cool. And he also says, please keep in mind I'm a novice, as the last time I played was back in college in the late 80s. Do you apply martial art techniques to a monk, or is that just for fighter specialization? If he's talking about the Oriental adventures, you've obviously applied martial art techniques to the monk, but the regular monk? I didn't know there was any martial art techniques for the regular monk.
I don't think if I remember correctly, the original monk as written, all that was already taken into consideration of the creation of the class.
He was a Western monk,
well,
the winemaking guys, not the, sit in the temple and, do karate all day. And
see, I never even took it that way.
I always took it as a Western monk as opposed to
I never even took it as a Western monk. I always took it more as the martial arts style monk, and it was originally written as all the stuff that was in the class itself was already taken into consideration. Now, when you had, like you're talking about Oriental Adventures, a lot more of that was incorporated into the monk class.
Well, see, now, I'm going to tell you why I agree with Vince to a certain degree, and that's because they said specifically in the player's handbooks that they are monastic aesthetics.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, they're more like a friar than...
Yes. Now, they do have some abilities that would emulate things from the Oriental adventures, like, they can avoid, arrows and bullets and, I mean, stone bullets, not real bullets now. But my thing was like the quivering palm. That to me is a more Oriental adventure type of feel because, you touch that nerve and they blow up or whatever they do, they bleed out of their, out of their ears and all that stuff. So, I mean, it all depends. But I think they were, like I said, they're a more monastic kind of type of aesthetic.
Right, but reading in the player's handbook, in that, you got it right here. It says monks are monastic ascetics who practice rigorous mental and physical training and discipline in order to become superior. Now, I'm sorry, I'm going to pull that. If we're going to use like real world analogies to this. The AD&D monk is nothing like a Franciscan friar. I know this for a fact. I'm sorry.
I didn't say he was a Franciscan friar.
No.
But what I'm saying is there is no real relation to what you would consider a monk from Western society.
Oh, that's okay, but let me ask you this, though. Do they have monasteries in Oriental Adventures?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is that what they're called, monasteries, or they call them something else?
I think they actually call them temple.
Yeah, see, that's when they use the words, and now we're going on
that's
semantics.
Just semantics.
Yeah.
That's just
Hey, but a monastery is a monastery to me. When they say monastery, I'm thinking of the Western world, and if they say temple, then we know we're talking about Oriental Adventures.
Well, it's just a matter of semantics then.
I've always considered the Monk and Player's Handbook to be a Western monk, like the Friar Tuck, like Matt originally said, with the brown robes and make the wine and go around
I never
traveling,
saw that at all.
giving
Never.
advice, but always have these really cool abilities that they can do. That's all.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just cannot picture like Friar Tuck doing the quivering palm technique. It just
Maybe
he was
you
high enough level, though.
maybe because you were
I'm
like
just
Robin
saying,
Hood.
It doesn't make any sense to me.
You never
I've
gave him
always
a chance.
taken it as like more of like the Keith Carradine, like from the Kung Fu series.
Being David
That's how
Carradine?
That's a stereotypical.
one of the damn Carradines, yes.
That's stereotyping now. That's a stereotypical monk.
Kung Fu, the legend continues.
Well, that's how I pictured them in the first edition AD&D.
No, the legend continues
players.
monk from the TV show. I always considered the Oriental monk.
Semantics. It's semantics.
I couldn't even see Friar Tuck jumping out of bullets.
Didn't we have a show about monks? We already got this all cleared up. I don't know.
We already proved that you were wrong. We were right.
No.
Oh, this is too hilarious. I love it.
Oh my goodness.
Okay.
Sorry, but Friar Tuck is not going to be doing things like quivering palm and speak with animals and.
Well, once he gets to 20th level, he can.
Maybe because Friar Tuck was too busy checking the wine, okay?
Okay. All right.
And thanks, Jeffrey. Thanks for the massive debate you had us do now.
That's awesome.
Oh, Nick, blunt weapons, by the way.
Wrong.
Next one comes from DM Rob. Okay, he's asking a question about the complete spellcasters by Bard Games. It claims to be system neutral. Actually, it's not. It claims to be Advanced Dungeons and Dragons first edition. If you actually look it up, it has some alternate classes in it: witch, warlock, mystics, necromancers, and sorcerers. His question is, he likes to convert some of them for a campaign and for castles and crusades. I'm not sure why he's asking us because we're not really going to do castles and crusades, but there's only 7 levels of spells, and Castles and Crusades have 9 levels of spells. If that's all the design the class is for 7 levels, then that's all you're going to really have, I think, right? So I'm looking at
talking clerics, they only have 7.
The complete spellcaster run here by Bard Games from 1983 is for various role-playing games, but it obviously is directed at Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. There's also another one made in 86.
Okay.
And that one is pretty much just a reprint of the same thing, just with some updated unfamiliar summon creatures, hierarchy of demons, ruins, symbols, circle protections, strange artifacts, major arcana, and more. It was the only thing that was in addition to what we originally had. So I don't really know.
I'm not familiar with it.
Yeah, I don't remember seeing this book at all, obviously. And I don't know anything about Castles and Crusades. I apologize. Anyone else know anything about Castles and Crusades?
I know.
I have a couple of the rule books, and it's really not much different than third edition D&D. I mean, it's really just stripped down version of it. So
I know the bookstore has like 12 copies of it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, from what I understand, it's like third edition with like some first edition sensibilities.
Yeah, pretty much.
So,
it's pretty good estimate.
He also says, is this normal for third-party supplements? What should I do if a player gets one of these classes to the high levels and expects 8th or 9th level spells?
Just tell them they don't exist?
Yeah, they just don't exist, pretty much.
Because I bet if you look at the spell advancement for those classes, there is no... It doesn't reference 8th or 9th level spells.
No.
So if they go into that class, that's one of the trade-offs. You can have this cool specialty class, but you lose access to 8th and 9th level spells.
Yeah,
unfortunately,
that's a good rule. That's a very good rule and everything. Yeah. And,
Fortunately, I don't have this book. I don't have access to this book, so I can't really comment.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that one. And it was originally printed in 83?
It says this edition 83, yeah. Huh. Released 1983 by...
it was by Bard Games.
Huh? I'm not familiar with Bard Games even at all.
Yeah. You know, I do recall they might have had one book. They had one called The Complete Alchemist.
Yeah, they have that.
I remember that one.
I see that on the list here.
I didn't know that. Well, I guess the other book's like a compilation of all those? Maybe. Of all the different classes of magic users that they created?
I'm looking at the Bard's Games history, and Talislantia comes up big time.
I remember Talislantia.
So maybe they produced Talislantia then. Oh, okay. The World Without Elves. Basically AD&D without elves.
Basically, yeah, I do recall that. I just didn't remember they made a supplement like that where they had like a whole bunch of alternate different magic user classes like Necromancer and Warlock.
And The Complete Adventurer is another one from 83 and 86. Buccaneer, Bounty Hunter, Gladiator, Harlequin, Knight, Martial Artist, Rogues, Scout, Spy, Swordsman, Warrior, and Witch Hunter. I don't remember.
This is actually an interesting bit of gaming history, which come to think of it means that the origin of the Splat book goes further back into the gaming world.
Yeah.
It didn't occur with third edition. It actually happened with first, 1983. Oh my God!
I mean, I remember seeing Roll Aids and Judges Guild and things, but I've never seen Bard Games before.
Yeah, I remember a couple of things like you were talking about, like Talislantia and some other things. I just never saw them in the store. I don't think.
Yeah, whatever. Sorry about that. We can't really help you out on that one, but I just wanted to throw it out there in case someone listening knows more about it.
Yeah, let us know. That'd be more interesting. Maybe try to do some more research on our own too.
Because I was doing this before the show, I was looking this up, and I'm like, I don't remember this at all.
Yeah.
Anyway, last email comes in from DJ Sir Mix-a-Lot, and he says, Yo, busy, let's do a demo together. Seriously, he says now. I noticed you guys stopped reading reviews. What happened? That's all he says.
Oh,
anybody want to take that one?
Yeah.
All I can say is thank you, but I'm not in the market to do any kind of studio work. But now let's go to the second portion. But I appreciate the support, though.
It's Bismarcky and Sir Mix-a-Lot back together again.
Oh man, that's old school now.
Okay.
Well, you know what? I've actually was thinking about that today about the reviews thing. I'm gonna try to make some time and start doing reviews again. So, I'm sorry, I mean Blackstone. I'm going to talk to Blackstone, see about him doing reviews of like old modules. I'll talk to him.
I think he meant something else.
He's not talking about those kind of reviews.
Oh,
you guys stop reading reviews. I thought he meant on.
Is he talking about iTunes?
Yeah.
Oh,
we stopped reading because the whole goal was to get to 100. And once we got to 100, we were going to stop.
Right. It doesn't mean you can't send them, and we still look on there. And also, it was taking a while to read the reviews. So
yeah, we still read all the reviews, and we appreciate all the feedback we get, positive and negative. So please continue posting them. Just because we may not read it on the show doesn't mean we didn't read it personally.
Oh no, I check every day, so just to make sure keep Will in line. So
Oh, here we go.
With that, rfistaff@gmail.com, or you can 570-865-4210, the hotline. Let's head into table manners.
Yeah, I remember back in the day, a fella knew how to judge a fireball on the fly and how far the cleric could push the undead he turned. I tell you, with all these min-maxers and munchkins, metagame and power game, there's something missing that I'm here to learn you. Now sit down and crack your book while I commence to teach you some.
Table manners.
Okay, on today's Table Manners, we are going to talk about Cavaliers. And when we talk about Cavaliers, we might also touch on the subject of Knights. And we can find this in two locations. Let's start with the Unearthed Arcana first.
Okay.
For those that do not know, the Cavalier was one of the core classes in the Unearthed Arcana, which is an actual core rule book. It's part of the line there and everything. And then we talk about Knights, which comes from the Dragonlance book. What's that title of the book again? It's Dragonlance Adventures, I believe, right?
Dragonlance Adventures, you got it.
Yeah, Dragonlance Adventures and everything. So this is pretty much going to cover, people that want to play Cavaliers, or if they want to play the typical Knight. I guess you can call them Knights. I mean, they have titles of them that when they reach a certain level, then they're called Knights. But whatever the case may be, let's talk about the Cavalier a little bit. I am a huge fan of the Cavalier. I like the refreshing role that they brought into the game because it was like people wanted to play fighters. I mean, gamers wanted to play fighters, but then it came down to specific. I want a different type of fighter. I want a barbarian, or I want a knight. Or I want this and that. And then the good thing that Unearthed Arcana came out and everything, because now we have Cavaliers.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I love Cavaliers. So at any time, y'all are welcome to interject if you like this.
Oh, we will.
Okay, good. I knew you would. Now, the Cavalier, as we all know, there is some errata out there and everything. I'm not going to go through the whole thing with the Cavalier and all the errata that came down with and everything. They do not have 12 sided die for hit points. It's a typical D10. To play Cavalier, you have to have some really decent stats and everything, and I believe most of them had to be at minimum 15 at the most. So, but besides that, my only issue with the Cavalier was the emphasis on the lance. Because when you think about it, I mean, a Cavalier at his best is on top of a horse, mounted on a horse, and with a lance.
Right.
Now, as we talk about that, what happens when you go into a dungeon? Well, the horse is not following you, my friends. It's just not going to follow you. And no, it's definitely, well, unless it's a huge dungeon. Now, like against the Giants, where some of that stuff is really big and everything. Yeah, you could probably take a horse in there, but I just don't think horses would do very well in enclosed spaces. And I just can't see a Cavalier charging giants or any type of monster in a dungeon. It just doesn't fit too well. And really, I don't think a Cavalier would put his mount in any type of danger to where he can't defend itself. So dungeons are a terrible place for a Cavalier's mount. So in a way, I was kind of disappointed because they put so much emphasis on a Cavalier and his lance. Now, don't get me wrong now. They can still use other weapons and fight and everything. But still, though, the UA Cavalier emphasized the horse. And, well, it didn't even just have to be a horse. If you really want to play a different type of Cavalier, they can have a different type of mount, like a giant boar, or what are some other large, a camel, or what?
Dragon?
Well, that's a weird Cavalier. I never played that.
We're talking about traditional knights, you would be a horse, so.
Yeah, so, the horse is your typical mount. But in any case, like I said, that was my only negative issue with Cavaliers. Now, let's say someone said, I don't really want to play a Cavalier and have that emphasis on a horse. Now we can jump to Dragonlance and take a look at the Knight. And because in Dragonlance, the Knights, which are real similar to Cavaliers, they do not emphasize a lance. However, if you played Dragonlance modules and everything, you wanted that lance.
Yes.
Well, the Dragonlance. You wanted those Dragon Lances in any case.
Yep.
So then, there's so much information on Cavaliers and Knights. It just goes crazy and everything. Okay, let me just say from this perspective. If you want to play a Cavalier and get away from the emphasis on a lance and look at other types of Cavaliers, there's plenty of them. Now, I did a search, and I was doing some reading. I was going through some of the Dragon magazines and everything. And there's quite a few, but the articles really don't cover that much. And I think you got these too, Nick, if you looked them up as well, or Matt, or I don't know who else looked up. Like I think one covered the Chivalrous Cavalier, which was number 72. And then you had the Elven Cavalier at 114. And then you had one that dealt with honor, which was glory, danger, and wounds, which was at number 125. And as we go on, now we're going out of first edition, but they had a Centaur Cavalier. They was covering on Monstrous Cavaliers, the Centaur, which is in 163. But 178 covered the three faces of chivalry, and that was actually an interesting article. And then on number 148, you had the Corrected Cavalier, which I believe covered the errata, if I'm correct. I didn't read too much into the articles. But again, those articles are missing something. It's still the same Cavalier with the huge emphasis on the lance. So other options, not just other options, if you're really interested in playing different types of Cavaliers, there's one I saw called a Standard Bearer. And that was very interesting because what this Cavalier does, now he doesn't lose his mount abilities and all that stuff. His emphasis, though, was carrying a standard into combat. And what happens is all allies of that Cavalier will get bonuses to their fear checks or bonuses versus, saving throws on fear. And they might have a morale boost where it gives them a +1 to their AC, a +1 to their attack, because they see the standard, waving in the wind while they're killing evil monsters. I think that's awesome. So when a DM has a player that says, I want to play a Cavalier, and they say, well, we're playing a sea adventure. Well, a Cavalier's not going to do too good out there on a boat with a horse trying to charge a giant octopus. I got to see that. That's got to be awesome.
That'd be cool.
What about a seahorse?
Yeah, a seahorse mount.
Then he becomes Aquaman.
I hate Aquaman. He's like stupid.
Well, he didn't do too good in that show Family Guy because he didn't save a lot of people. And I always make fun of Aquaman for some reason. I don't know why. But, so that, make it an interesting Cavalier. People don't want to play different types of Cavaliers. Just like you have different types of Paladins. And I can't remember that article. Do y'all remember that article with the different types of Paladins?
Yeah, it was different alignments of Paladins, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, see, they have different alignments and they have different orders. Now, let's get into that. Now, this is where it gets very interesting here, because if you take a look in the Dragonlance Adventures, you'll see that knights have different types of orders. Like, I think one was Knights of the Rose, Knights of the Sword. There was, what are those other ones?
Order of the Crown.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's the 3 levels of knight of Somalia.
Right. See, and each of them had their special place within those orders. Again, you can do that with Cavaliers too. And I tell you, there are so many nice resources out there for that. And I'm going to have to pick on Pathfinder because I love Cavaliers, and I'm certain that second edition might have a supplement. I didn't look at my second edition material. I actually look at it.
The complete Fighter's Handbook.
Yeah, I think they had different orders and stuff in there, too, that you could use. Yeah. But Pathfinder made the Cavalier another core character class, and they have tons of orders, like Order of the Dragon or Order of the... Well, you can make some orders. Order of the Octopus, I guess, is a multi-limbed Cavalier. I'm just, being facetious, of course, now. But you can make different...
Order of the Honey Badger.
Yeah, well, yes, you can make different orders, and so then assign these Cavaliers, maybe a special ability as being part of that order. Like I said, Cavaliers are just tremendous. Let's see, their orders have to also carry their codes, and that's a really huge issue with Cavaliers. And now, just correct me if I'm wrong, when it deals with the Knights, I don't think it has too much of an emphasis on that either, does it? As much as Cavalier?
It's more so the Cavalier.
Yeah.
Because the Cavalier always reminded me like a combination fighter paladin on horseback. It's like has aspects of both.
Well, yeah, but they don't have a lot of the special abilities of a paladin. They're more... Right. I always looked at the Cavalier, and by the way, when you mentioned that Dragon Magazine issue, that was my little side note. My very first issue of Dragon Magazine I got for my subscription, that issue number 72.
Oh, was it?
It has a whole little special place in my heart. But yeah, I always thought the Cavalier being the analogy of the knight. I mean, it's the same thing. It's the knight for AD&D.
Right.
And I always thought that it would be interesting, like what you were talking about, is having different nightly orders,
Yeah.
depending on the alignment of the order or what they follow. I mean, it was before that issue, and I think it was in 1983 where they had the anti-paladin, which was
that was volume 1 of the best of, right?
Yeah, and that's volume 1 of Best of Dragon magazine too.
Mm-hmm.
So why not have like different alignments of holy orders of Cavaliers / Knights? I mean, it's such a great idea. But also with the Cavalier, I always thought, because I'm dealing with this in a current campaign, when you're talking about their specialization basically with the lance,
right?
That's a very cool ability, especially when they're not on horseback too. Because I know in the rules, like if they are proficient with the heavy lance, a heavy lance used while dismounted is treated as an all pike.
Wow.
So,
yeah,
with respect to all specifications except length, width, and speed factors. So basically, it gets the damage of an all pike. Or if they're using a medium or light lance, it can treat it as a spear. So that means what I remember in our current campaign when they went to the Isle of Dread. And the Cavalier had his lance, and he was taking it through the dungeon. He had a medium lance, taking it through the dungeon. Because guess what? He could set that spear, have it ready for a charge against something.
Well, that's the best module to do that, because with those dinosaurs, what do dinosaurs do? They charge.
And that's what happened. Unfortunately, when the Triceratops did charge him, even though he had a bonus to hit, he still missed.
Well, you know what?
And proceeded to grind him into the dust.
Well, then, you know what the lance is good for now? It's a toothpick. So
basically,
that's awesome. I think that's awesome. That's awesome. But when I was talking about different types of classes for Cavaliers, and I brought one up as a
standard bearer.
The standard bearer, which is good. You have some other ones out there, and I get these from Pathfinder because I'm studying this real closely. The Honor Guard, which basically is a knight that he's an honor guard, and they get special abilities for being an honor guard, but they lose other abilities of the Cavalier because, of course, they ain't going to be on a horse that much. Right. Then you have one like a Beast Rider, and I thought about this is a weird kind of Cavalier, a Beast Rider. Basically, it's just a Cavalier, maybe from a different type of order where they don't use horses, they use other types of animals. Mm-hmm. So again, there's so many things. There's another Cavalier class called an Emissary, which is very interesting now. Because now you have a Cavalier that's probably more prone to being a communicator. Even though he still fights a lot, he's still on a horse. So along that sense and everything, yeah, it's very important, to really look at it and try and make the Cavalier a versatile type of character instead of by the book. And now that you did bring up the Paladin, just to let you know, the Paladin is no longer a subclass of fighter. He's actually a subclass of the Cavalier now if you use the UA.
Yeah, that was one thing. I never really liked that idea.
And so now what you do is you have a Paladin who gets all those special powers, but now are subjected to that code they live by. And I'm going to tell you about a Cavalier. That was one thing I thought was kind of weird for a Cavalier. If they see the evil boss, they're charging for the boss, ignoring everything else.
Yeah.
Because they want to challenge the bad guy. So I'm looking at this. I see the Paladin and the Cavalier having a fist fight over who's going to kill the big bad guy.
Yeah.
It's mine. No, it's mine. Pow. Oh, you want to hit me? I'm going to go kill him. Pow.
That's happening in my group because we have one person playing a Paladin and another one a Cavalier. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, so the important thing with the Cavalier and Paladin, though, is that code of conduct. And again, when you take a look at Knights of Solamnia and everything, it doesn't really, have much emphasis on those issues. They're just part of certain orders. I don't see nothing on, like their code of conduct. I mean, they got to take, an oath and all that stuff and their thing of loyalty, all that good stuff, but there's nothing really as stringent as it is in the UA, which, and honestly, I like the UA more so than I do the Dragonlance as far as that's concerned. And again, Cavaliers are still knights, though, because I believe at level 10 or 9, they become a knight. Oh, I'm sorry, I take that back. At level 6, their level title is as a knight.
Knight, yep.
Yeah. But now with the orders of the Solamnic knights and everything, and it's kind of funny because they can't actually be a knight until they reach a certain level. And then, I guess the second or third level, if I've read correctly, it's been a while since I looked at Dragonlance. I believe at second level, that's when they actually become a true knight, or whatever the case may be. Yeah, as a squire, defender of the crown. So it all depends on what kind of knight they are.
True.
But I did notice one thing interesting. They said Knights of the Crown are variants of Cavaliers that described in the Art of Arcana, which is very interesting. But they said there's some important differences too as well. So that's pretty good and everything. Oh, I read by the book. Oh, my Lord, I done caused some trouble, didn't I?
Oh, no.
No, don't do that.
I'm sorry. Nah, it's all good and everything. But you all will notice also that when you take into the Knights of Solamnia, this is pretty interesting too as well. There can only be so many of that level title. When they get to high level.
Yeah, it's like the druids and everything.
That's very interesting.
I like the Knights of Solamnia a little bit better than the UA Cavalier.
I never liked their name because it sounds so close to salami.
Well, you don't usually use that really. You use the Knight of the Circle, Knight of the Crown.
Knight of Salami.
Knight of Salami and Cheese.
Well,
I would end up calling them Knights of Somalia, and they'd be like East African Knights.
True, yeah.
And you know what? That's nothing wrong with that. I think that's awesome because the knights of different orders come from different regions of the world, and that's exceptional. I have no problems with knights of
So
salami.
an Italian knight would be a knight of salami?
Of Genoa.
Pizza.
An Italian knight would be a knight of Genoa.
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 It's Genoa, ain't it?
Genoa.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe I'm messing up.
Anywho.
But no, whatever the case may be and everything, like I said, knights, if you want to play knights, you can look at the Knights of Solamnia and pull it from that and the number of orders they have, or you can make up your own and everything. Like I said, my other recommendation is go to the Pathfinder SRD, which is free online, and then you'll see that whole thing that's covered on Cavaliers, and you start looking at all the orders they fall in, all the special abilities that they get with being in that order, and how they're supposed to react as a player character. And all this stuff, it's kind of transparent and everything. You can use it, be versatile, diversify a little bit,
I was trying to find I thought there was a Dragon Magazine article that came not too long after when the Cavalier was put out, that someone did an article about different mounts for the Cavalier. Besides a horse, like a unicorn, hippogriff, griffin.
Right,
I couldn't find it. Did you find anything about that at all, Will?
I saw an article on it concerning mounts, but I thought that could be used by any player character. I'll
Okay.
that back up again. But yeah, I see what you're saying. And that makes it even perfect for a beast. I don't know why a beast rider, not a beast master, because that's more like a barbarian kind of thing.
Yeah, Mark Singer. Yeah,
Portal through time.
Yeah.
No, that one didn't exist. That one stunk.
Which one? The second one?
The Portal through time, yeah.
Oh, that was horrible when the car came through. That was ridiculous. That was horrible. The first one was awesome. I like that.
Yes, it was.
But the Beast Rider, I think that's awesome. I think that's a great Cavalier kind of style kind of thing from a different nation. Yeah. We'll have to look that up sometime on different.
I always thought the idea of somehow a Cavalier, getting as a griffin or a hippogriff mount would be totally cool.
I think that's awesome. That is what the fantasy game is all about and everything. The outlandish and the crazy. If I had a choice, I'd take a Cavalier on an ostrich. Those bad boys can run.
Yeah, and they
can fly around, and when you bonk people on the heads, they turn into eggs, and then you can grab the eggs and get points for them.
Yeah,
like the game Joust that you stole that from.
Yeah.
And there was a dragon on flying mounts. It was issue 50, page 48. There's an article on flying mounts.
Oh my god, that would be so great. You get an ostrich mount, and you cast fly on the ostrich mount. That would be so awesome. I would have to have my Cavaliers armor painted green or something like that, like the original Joust game.
I would end up having the ostrich mount, make morale checks, and when it fails, it sticks its head in the sand.
There you go.
I
It has to make that really
idea.
bad thumping noise when you played that game. Went thump, 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 thump.
See, I had a good idea with an ostrich, and look what y'all did to me. You just.
I'm sorry. I just thought of the game Joust, which was so cool back in the day. I love that game, and now you're giving me idea. Cavalier with the ostrich mouth with the fly spell permanently cast on it.
Just don't fly over the lava pit where the hand comes down and try and pulls the ostrich in the lava.
Yeah, that's right. You got to flap real good. You got to flap real hard.
Well, with all that said, I think I'm done talking about Cavaliers and ostriches. But both these books can be used hand in hand to come up with a different type of archetype type of character for a Cavalier if the DM will allow that. And I see no reason why not, as long as you maintain within, nothing overpowering. I think it would make a really fun character to play.
Now, I do have kind of like one question or like something to pose to everybody is I remember when the class, like I said, came out in Dragon Magazine. Then a couple years later, it was put in Unearthed Arcana. Now, I've seen on various message boards how that when everybody talks about Unearthed Arcana, generally the first thing that the person brings about their anti-Unearthed Arcana is like, the Cavalier class is broken. It's broken. It's too overpowerful. It's just any comments or... See, I don't think it is. I don't think the Cavalier class is any more powerful than a Paladin or a Ranger. If you want to talk about like subclasses.
I think they were saying it was broken because of the hit points, maybe.
Oh, and they fixed that up because it was the hit point issue with the 12 hit dice. Yeah, that was a typo. It was only 10, and I think it's the Barbarian that has the 12-sided hit dice.
That is correct. Yeah, that's correct.
It's not the Cavalier. It's only 10.
Get to the chopper.
No.
Well, that's a different show.
It's not a tumor.
No, that's Kindergarten Cop.
But yeah,
but you're right though.
I don't have a problem with the Cavalier class at all. I think it's a cool one. I think it's a great class for someone who gets into the game for the first time. They say, well, I want to play a knight. Well, okay.
There's the Cavalier.
This is the knight in shiny armor that you get to play. But
guess what, though? Now, as you say that, there's no reason why someone can't play a straight fighter under a certain type of fighter order. A straight-up fighter could be a knight, but they won't get all those special abilities.
Right.
There.
Right. Oh, yeah, I agree. Sure, if you don't qualify with the prerequisites for a Cavalier, there's no reason why you can't make your fighter as a more noble, knightly kind of class.
He's the loser. He's the loser knight because he didn't make it.
Right. Actually, it'd make a real good background for a character. So.
And, it's funny that you brought up mounts, just to let you know that as Cavaliers level up in ability, they get the better mounts if they can find them, like the Griffin and the Hippogriff and the Pegasus. And
yeah, I thought there was something about that. I just couldn't find it. Maybe I was skimming through too fast.
Yeah, you have to be 11th level to ride a handle and ride a Griffin, and 9th level to do a Hippogriff. At 7th level is a Pegasus, and I think that'd be cool.
There it is. Yeah, I see. Hidden in plain sight, right there on page 15.
But now look at that, no. Only a female elven Cavalier can handle and ride a unicorn as a steed.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I'll go for the Pegasus myself.
Well,
Pegasus would be another good mount, too.
I think so because, I think that's awesome.
Yeah, just find it. That's all.
Yeah.
You do Clash of the Titans and everything and have to kill the Titan or whatever it was.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, but I think so. Go for it. Yes, Cavaliers or Knights of Solamnia, use them, mix it up and everything. Come up with a fresh character with an interesting background and just apply it together. I'm telling you, you're going to have a lot of fun this way.
Just because you're playing a knight doesn't mean you have to be like, haha, my guy is only trained to be wonderful on horses. I mean,
right.
That is exactly.
If you've ever watched any movies or TV shows or anything to do with knights, you see they're always training on a horse, and they're also training off a horse, as in sword fighting.
Yes.
So why can't your knight be the type of knight that uses his horse to travel from location to location, get off his horse, and defend that way?
I have my noble steed right here. His name's Donkey.
Yeah, exactly, Donkey.
And that is what a fighter who fails to make it to Cavalierhood or whatever, that will be his mount, a donkey. That's excellent.
Man of La Mancha. Hey, Don Quixote.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I hate to reference Knight's Tale, but
Oh, that's
Actually,
good.
I
I love that movie.
I like that. That was awesome.
Okay, good, because I know a lot of people can't stand that movie, and I like that movie. But there's a good example of how they tried to show an example of what a knight would have been like during that time.
And there you go. Apply that to the game itself, and it can be a lot of fun. Just gotta have an open mind and get outside of the box sometimes.
I did like the fact that during the sword jousting, how they the sword fights, how they showed how bulky the armors were.
Oh, isn't that crazy? Yeah. And you know what? Even if we're talking about player characters and their mounts, don't forget, you can have vampires as cavaliers. And then have them ride nightmares into combat. So
that would be so cool. As a big bad dude.
There you go.
Evil cavalier knight who has like a nightmare as his steed.
You mean like Lord South or something?
Yeah.
I mean, that's perfect right there. I mean, you can
wicked.
Take this and twist it around. A plus for the characters. Then it could be a minus for the doggone, for the good guys when they use, like vampires. And when he hits with a lance, it still drains 2 levels. I'm just being a little creative here. But I'm saying all this stuff you can apply, to both players and as NPCs. Use it. Your imagination is the limit.
Word.
I can get behind that.
So let's go. Thanks for that. Write in rfistaff@gmail.com, and let's head into our next segment before Matt falls over in his chair.
Oh man, what the heck is that?
Stand aside, you fool! I have a spell that will work here!
What do you mean I can't hit with that? Oh, right, fine. Show it to me in the book.
Welcome to Game Mechanics.
Okay, let's jump into the mechanics of the game called Game Mechanics. This week we're going to talk a little bit about 3d6 save checks versus d20 save checks. I don't know if you guys use the 3d6 save check method at all. I've used it quite a bit in my games. I know a lot of people have asked more about it, and they've heard other people use it. I'm just going to ask you guys real quick. Did you guys use the 3d6 method at all, Will? Do you use that method?
I did, and that was a long time ago. You're talking 34, 35 years ago.
You just went basically to the standard, however they just do it now with the book. Okay.
Well, I didn't do it by choice. I was a player back then, so I can't remember. It's been so long ago when that happened, everything.
Okay, and what about you, Nick?
Yeah, I think I've always used a standard D20 method. I didn't know that there was a 3D6 save method until you brought it up.
Yeah, it was kind of like an unofficial thing that I guess Gary designed to make. I don't understand the bell curve, and Matt knows a little bit more how that works.
Yeah,
and Jason would have known that, like he was Einstein, but.
Basically, what's going to happen is on the 3d6, your average is 10. You're going to roll 10, one of those middle numbers, more than any other number combination.
Was it like 9 through 12 or something like that, or 10 through 12?
Yeah, it was like it ends up being a bell curve shape.
It's in the DMG, that bell curve.
Right. And with that, yeah, basically, you're more often than not, you're going to roll 9, 10, 11. Those are the numbers that are going to come up more frequently. So
interesting. Are you serious on that?
Yeah. If you look page 10 on the DMG, there's a 3D6 bell curve, and it shows the most common the averages.
You're right.
9 through 12 are the numbers that you're going to most likely get.
I apologize because when I was thinking 2D6 and I was thinking of Settlers of Catan for some reason. I apologize.
Settlers of Catan.
No. If you play Settlers of Catan, when you put out your little number tokens on the little land pieces, you'll see that the number of dots underneath that number. What's that telling you is that is the likelihood, the frequency that number will come up on 2D6. And that is real. We're doing 3D6. I apologize.
Yeah, because in a 1D6, it's a 1 in 36. Of any possible dice combination. 3D6 It is 6 times 36, whatever that is. Like 1 in 256?
256.
Something like that. But anyway, but what happens is in the 3d6 method, you're less likely to roll that 18, 17 than you would be on a d20. Since a d20 it's linear, you have the same chance of rolling any number. So if you need to roll really high, you have a better chance to roll really high on a d20. Yeah. If you want to avoid rolling really low, you want to use the 3d6.
3d6, yep.
So
now the method I'm referring to is, I don't know where I picked it up, but I know Gary Gygax has used it in a bunch of his games from reading online and from the great DM Joe who showed me this method as well. Like, oh yeah,
great DM Joe.
Yeah, it was basically to give a DM a little bit more control and show players there's a little more danger behind the situation and not let them know at the same time what they're saving versus. So if I say to you, Nick, save versus spell, you're like, oh, okay, you're going through your mind all these different spell combination things that can happen to you. Mm-hmm. Now, if I say to you, Nick, roll 4d6 versus your intelligence and roll below it, you're thinking to yourself, what the heck's going on?
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
It's another way for a DM to disguise, saving throws. And the more dice you throw to it, the more complex or harder it is for a player to save.
Well, this brings up a question, though, since we're bringing up this thing on the bell curve and everything and the number of dice on this. Mm-hmm. I think we talked about this before, Vince. Remember when we did Call of Cthulhu back in the day?
Yeah.
We didn't use 2 10-siders. We used 2 20-siders.
Yeah, 2 20-siders, yeah.
2 20-siders, and my thing is, what is it? Is it the same chance if you use percentile dice, or is it different then? Would you have any idea?
Is for what? I'm sorry.
Well, if you use percentile dice, are you gonna if you roll a 50 on there, will you have the same chance of rolling a 50% on 2 20-siders though, or do you have more combinations?
I see what you're saying. I don't know, honestly. I've never compared the 2 D20 percentiles to the 2 D10s.
Yeah, because now the 20-siders I'm referring to, if people don't know that, this is not a D20 that has 1 through 20 on it, like 17, 18, 19, 20. It has 1 to 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0 twice on each 20-sider.
Yeah, I know. I have 2 dice with my top secret game.
Yeah, I think the ones that were like 11 through 20 would have like a little plus sign or something like that next to them. Because I remember those like that.
Right. So I was just wondering how that would also affect instead of using the percentile dice, the 1 through 0, the regular percentile dice we use, the 10-siders.
Yeah.
How that worked with the 2 20-siders. I was just wondering, since you brought that's very interesting on that bell curve thing. That's actually really interesting to me.
I don't think the bell curve applies.
I think it would be the same. Because really, all you're doing is doubling the chances of all the numbers to show up on any one die.
Oh, that does make sense.
So
it does even out. Yeah,
it should even out. Now you'll get people saying, well, a D10 rolls differently than a D20. Then you have the variance of that. Just like people argue that there's D10s that the numbers, like one side will be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and the other side will be 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Like if you were to look at it like a top.
Oh yeah, I see.
And people will argue, well, you have a spin down die. You shouldn't be using that. You need to roll this other one where it has the numbers are more randomly placed. And because people argue those roll differently.
Wow, really? That's interesting.
Yes. I have played with an airplane engineer who actually brought up the fact I was using a spin down die. So
Did you punch him in the face and said, I don't care?
Yeah.
One of his friends was sitting at the table who was a black belt in karate, so probably wouldn't have been a wise idea.
Yeah, I don't think so.
No, but I'm sure there's some minuscule difference, but over the course of one game session, you're not really going to notice. Then again, you could use this for how every time we talk about random number generations on the forums, I bring up the fact computers cannot generate random numbers.
Those are the kind of people who just argue over the minutia, and you just want to take your DMG and smack them on the head with it.
Yes, and I'll admit doing that when it comes to computer number generation, because computers don't generate random numbers.
No, they don't.
Well, thinking about what you were just saying, Will, about the D20, D percentile, and the D10,
Right.
I would think there'd be a pretty big difference in the standard number that would pop out. Because instead of rolling your D10, you have a 1 in 10 chance of one of the sides coming up. Now you have, a 1 in 20 chance of a certain side coming up.
Well, no, you have a 2 in 10.
2 in 10, that's it.
2 in 20, which comes down to 1 in 10.
Well, so it's the same thing then.
Yeah,
All right.
no, it's interesting. I was just wondering because you brought it up, and actually, that 3D6 thing, I like the way that sounds. I actually like the way that works because I think you have a better chance of making your saving throws with that.
You do unless the DM stacks the dice on you.
Yeah, see, that's the problem. Okay, no, that's good. I'm glad you brought that up, though.
I do have a question. Do you use the same chart for saving throws when you use the 3D6 method?
As far as saving throws go, I leave those alone. You're using the D20 saves as normal, but if I want to show a little more emphasis on something, I'll switch it over to the attributes. Like if they want to jump across a pit.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Or if there's a spell casted that's involving the mind, I'll do that.
So you're talking like a skill check kind of thing almost in a way.
It's not really a skill check. It is considered a save.
Okay.
Yes, that is a save. I agree with that. That's a very good point there. I like that.
It just puts more emphasis on the save, and it's also a way to shield the players, because everyone seems to know everything these days, from first edition, so...
No, I actually like that because, like I said, if a red dragon breathes its fire attack on you, you tell them to roll 3d6, and then hey, if they make it, they take half damage. If they fail, well, they're crispy.
At that point, if it's a red dragon breathing on them, I would just say, save versus breath weapon.
Right, but you're talking like jumping across like a crevasse or something like that.
Yeah, or you're walking down a hallway, you trip a tripwire. Roll versus strength to see if this happens or that happens, or
okay, and you make a 3d6 roll. Oh, okay.
And if the harder the roll is, you stack the dice on the player. Obviously, if a player has an 18 and a stat, he'll have no problem.
Mm-hmm. Unless there's some sort of modifier to it.
Yeah, unless the DM says 5d6. I've gone as high as 66.
Oh, okay, so you just stack the dice.
Yeah, the DM.
Oh, I see what you're doing. See, I thought you was still do the 3d6 as the base, and then let's say they had an 18 dex, they would have a +4.
No. I keep stacking the dice.
No, that's cool. I'm cool with that.
Yeah.
Did you say crevasse?
Crevasse? What?
Yeah. That was Nick, you said crevasse?
Yeah, I said crevasse.
I thought that was crevice.
It is crevice.
Okay.
I would say either one.
I was making sure I heard
crevasse
the right
is a proper term.
It's more British. That's all.
Oh my Lord, that was hilarious. I said, like, what?
Look it up in Wikipedia. It's a proper word. So there, because Wikipedia never lies.
Oh boy! Welcome to the kindergarten podcast. Duck is duck goose. I mean, it's not the best method in the world, but it does take the emphasis off of what the player thinks is going on.
Okay, I see how it works now. That's kind of cool. I want to try that out.
It's just something alternate to use, just to confuse the players, because I can't stand when everybody knows everything that's happening.
Right. It's almost sounds like how D6 Star Wars was.
Yeah, I think I might have gotten it off there because that was one of the first games I started playing. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, you can't beat that. That was that was the best Star Wars game ever.
Yep.
I know, it was a great game. Anyway, so I'll go throw it out there. You guys try using it. Let me see what you say. Or if I staff at gmail.com, we'll head into creature feature.
That is not dead, which can eternal life. And with strange eons, even death may die. I welcome the unwary to the Creature Feature Theater.
All right, creature feature here this week, and we're going to be going to the Monster Manual 2. And I thought this was a pretty cool creature to talk about here. It's one of the little known types of elementals. And I believe it's pronounced Jan, Jann.
Marsha.
I was thinking the same thing, too. And now the Jan are kind of interesting because they are a combination of like all four different elements. They're I guess you would call the weakest forms of genies, and they spend most of their time on the prime material plane. Sometimes they wear chainmail armor. They get to use scimitars, composite bows. Sometimes they get strength bonuses, depending on male or female gets strength bonuses. They have different, very interesting abilities that they can use one at a time, once per melee round. Growth or reduction twice each per day. Mm-hmm. Invisibility 3 times per day. Create food and water as a 7th level cleric. Etherealness once per day for a maximum of 1 hour. And they can dwell in air, earth, fire, or water environments for up to 48 hours. That includes the elemental planes, and they're just going through the different stuff about the Jani. I guess they're called the Jani or Jan. I guess the plural is Jani or Jani, however you want to pronounce it. But they're very suspicious of humans. They do not like demi-humans and detest humanoids. So you can definitely use that to your advantage as a DM. I think it'd be really cool to put them on a outskirts of near a desert or some sort of a wasteland. Maybe they're having to deal with goblins or orcs, because their alignment is neutral good. So it doesn't mean you can't run into these and maybe form an alliance with them. They do accept the Jinn, but shun the Deos, Ifrit, and Mayrids, which I thought was kind of interesting.